'Tis I, Rose. This is my attempt at finding a setup that looks vaguely appealing, and I think I've failed, but whatever. In 2019, I did not read nearly as much as I would have liked, because when do I ever? So this is a list of books that I've read pretty much throughout college thus far. I'm hoping that this will make me more accountable for my reading goals. This year I want to read 26 books, which is more than I have read in the last, 2.5 years, so hopefully it works out. First on the list is The Shining by Stephen King. This is the second Stephen King novel that I've read. I've also read Misery. I'm hoping to read it this year. I don't know what it is. Because Stephen King is so wildly popular, I think now people are getting more and more into critiquing his work, which is all well and good, but a lot of booktubers and stuff just hate a lot of his works or just really, really heavily critical of them, and I love his novels. I've only read 2 thus far, and they're known as 2 of his best, and he's written 90 books, so I'm sure some of them were kind of bad, but these ones I adore. I just love the amount of detail that he puts into his protagonists and their backstories, and I love the dynamic between the Torrances, how they're all imperfect, and even Wendy kind of envies Jack and Danny's relationship, how Jack is Danny's favorite parent, and just how complicated the whole situation is, and of course how scary it is. I Know This Much Is True by Wally Lamb. Oh my god. One of my new favorite books of all time. The main character, Dominic, has a twin brother named Thomas who has schizophrenia, and at the beginning of the book, he cuts off his own hand in a public library. If you're a writer, please read this book. The characters feel like real people. Real, heavily flawed people. And as someone who loves realistic fiction, that is one of the highest compliments that I could possibly pay. It's a brick, it's 900 pages, but it is the best brick that I have ever invested my time in. Granted, I haven't seen the movie Brick with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Wow, I am a comedy genius. Next up, we have When the Curtain Falls and In the Time We Lost by Carrie Fletcher. Need I even say anything? I don't think so. I don't think I need. The Dire King by William Ritter. I love the Jacoby series so much. It has this awesome setting in the 19th century of America, and it follows a young kind of detective-ish woman named Abigail Rook and her new partner, Jacoby, who's a seer, so he can see all of these magical invisible creatures and auras and things like that. And they solve supernatural paranormal crimes, and it's just the cure for what ails ya. The Dire King is the 4th and final book in the series, and it just Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine. I had to read this book for a seminar on multiculturalism, which was taught by a white lady. It's really eye-opening. It's about microaggressions experienced by Black people in America, and it's told in second person, so they say, this happens to you. These are the things that you experience. It makes it a lot easier for, say, a white person who doesn't experience these things to be able to relate to and sympathize with these kinds of situations. Because I'm sure I've unwittingly committed all kinds of microaggressions in my life that I had no idea about, and it's good for me to read stuff like this so I know not to do that. Here I am on the road to human decency. The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. You know all those books and TV shows about a group of teenagers who fight supernatural beings and they all have weird names and it's ridiculous that this is all happening in a high school? That's happening in this book, but the book isn't about those people. Instead, it's just about another group of friends who happen to go to school with those people. And they know that these things are occurring. They're like, yeah, we had a zombie outbreak, yeah, there were werewolves, but, those kids took care of it. The heroes. There's 3 kids named Satchel, and 2 of them died, and they were all in a love triangle. Instead, we follow Mike, who's struggling with OCD, and his sister, who's struggling with an eating disorder, and Mike has a crush on his friend, and then his other friend is there, and all this stuff. And then they happen to occasionally witness some sort of grandiose supernatural thing, and they're like, yeah, hope those heroes get on it. It's a really, really interesting concept. It's just, I didn't really care for the characters. I'm not saying that this story should have been centered around, the hero kids. I just think the actual kids that we got could have been a little more fleshed out or fun. Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. It was cute. Matchmaking for Beginners by Maddie Dawson. I could not get through that without stuttering. At the beginning of the book, this young woman, Marnie, is engaged to the nephew of this older woman named Blix. She's 70. And then the nephew is about to leave Marnie at the altar, but she makes him marry her anyway, and then they get an annulment a week later. Blix also is kind of like Jacoby. She can see people's auras and their feelings and the way that they match up together. She's like a psychic matchmaker. And she decides that one of her reclusive neighbors is a match with Marnie. Marnie. But Marnie's ex-husband, Blix's nephew, is coming back and he's stirring up trouble. An absolutely remarkable thing by Hank Green. Oh my god. Yes, he has a considerable internet following. Yes, his brother is an established author. But wow, this is not just another YouTuber writing a book. These giant transformer-like statues just pop up all over the world, and April is like the first person who reports on it, so she gets famous, and then she's dealing with fame and dealing with, oh my god, her ego and feeling special, like she's chosen by these alien people to represent humanity, and she gets caught up in it, and it's so complicated, and they're trying to answer the question of who sent these statues, why are they there, what do these aliens want, what is going on? I cannot wait for the sequel! I also read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I read this my freshman year of college after Doki Doki Literature came out, and that game left me triggered with a capital T. There's a warning at the beginning of that game for people with, heart problems or those who are just easily disturbed to not play it, and as it turns out, I am easily disturbed. I needed something to exhaust my mind so I could sleep, and Turtles All the Way Down seemed like a good option. The funny thing is, I was having all of these intrusive thoughts, and then reading a book about a girl who has intrusive thoughts made me feel a lot better. I wasn't expecting to like how much of the book just takes place in Aza's head and is her struggle with OCD. And I like how personal that story is to John Green, and also it's really nice that this isn't as pretentious as his other works. Undress Me in the Temple of Heaven by Susan Jane Gilman. Not an erotic novel, despite what the title may suggest. This is a memoir, I guess, of when the author graduated from Brown in the 80s and decided to go to China with her roommate. Yes, 2 white American girls in China in the 1980s. Do you see where this is going? And I don't want to give away the other factor of what makes this book so intriguing and crazy, so please just read it. Don't read any reviews, don't even read a summary, because I think it gives away the hints as to what I'm alluding to, so please just read it. It gets so wild. Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I haven't read many graphic novels, but this is a very important one, even if you don't really read graphic novels. The author's father is a Holocaust survivor, and this is just his story, essentially. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Please, 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 I am begging you, please, if you read no other book in your life, please read this one. It's about these 2 black sisters who have been separated for years. One is a child wife in America and the other is a missionary in Africa, and it's their letters to each other, and it's so beautiful and it's so heartbreaking, and it's just essential to read. The Heir and the Crown by Kiera Cass. This is the sequel duology to the Selection trilogy, and it follows Maxon and America's daughter Edelyn as she is preparing for a selection of her own. It's alright. I really liked Edelyn as a character. I thought she was a very realistic princess without being super snooty. She's just really spoiled and privileged. But I think Kiera Cass was a little too concerned with maybe subverting the audience's expectations as to who she would end up with, that she didn't spend enough time actually developing the romance. There were 2 guys that I predicted would end up with Edelyn, and she in fact does end up with one of them, so. Diary of an Oxygen Thief by Anonymous. This is a memoir? It's left up to the reader as to whether it's fictional or nonfiction. If it's nonfiction, I can understand why the author didn't want to put their name to this. Our nameless narrator is a man who thrives on emotionally abusing women, and not quite in the way that you might expect. Very good book, very quick, really interesting kind of character study, and I would recommend it. Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I always forget that I read this book. Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. This was the last book that I read of 2019, and it barely managed to slip in there solely because it's like a pamphlet. It's very, very short. It's a how-to guide on writing romance. It took me like an hour to read, and if you are interested in writing romance or just romantic subplots, I would recommend it. It's really helpful. Those are the books that I've read in the last few years. Hopefully come the end of 2020, I will have read 26 or more books. Only time will tell. Thank you very much for watching. I love you. Bye-bye.